Hello and welcome to another episode of Chuchu is a Ranker, and on this episode I'm going to be detailing my personal top 10 albums of the 2000s. As always with these decades lists, I'll throw out a hard subjectivity warning straight off the bat. I'm putting aside objective thinking here and totally leaning into my own preferences. These 10 albums are the ones from this particular decade that I keep coming back to and never seem to tire of. But of course your own list will look completely different to mine, so why not drop it down in the comments section? I don't expect there to be too much crossover if I'm being honest. But anyway, without further ado, let's be complete rankers and rank up a storm. These are my personal top 10 albums of the 2000s. So we're going to be kicking off this list with Talkie Walkie by the French electronica duo Air, which was their third album from 2004. And here we have a perfect LP of relaxing and atmospheric electronica, with occasional flourishes of rock instrumentation. The album nicely divides its time between melancholic ambience and killer pop hooks, with each song adding to the record's overall atmosphere, while still being excellent in their own right. Highlights in an album with no downtime includes Run, which is a spectacular mood piece that features these undulating walls of vocals in the chorus. It's a really unforgettable soundscape. Mike Mills is a Genesis-style instrumental with a gorgeous pastoral lilt, as collage of sounds dredging up images of manicured mazes and country rambles. Universal Traveller and Surfing on a Rocket have shimmering rock elements to them, whether it be the beautiful fingerpick guitars on the former or the slick lead guitar lines on the latter. While the Japanese-themed duo of Cherry Blossom Girl and Alone in Kyoto are great. Cherry Blossom Girl with its instant pop appeal and subtle sadness, and Alone in Kyoto with its cathartic ambient soundscapes. So yeah, electronica doesn't get much better than this. For me, this is easily Air's best LP and a total masterpiece of its genre. It's amazing. Next up, we have a duo of a different nature, this time the Norwegian folk duo Kings of Convenience, with their debut LP Quiet is the New Loud from 2001. And Kings of Convenience takes the basic formula of Simon and Garfunkel, infuses it with Belle and Sebastian's indie cool, and adds a sprinkle of Morrissey into the mix. The end result of which adds up to arguably the most compelling modern folk act out there. And this debut is all kinds of awesome. It's mostly just twin acoustics and beautiful harmonised vocals, but on tracks such as Toxic Girl and Failure, the band turned to twee indie rock, which adds a nice frisson of variety to the album. Still though, the biggest highlights do come from the more emotionally charged traditional folk numbers. Opener, Winning a Battle, Losing a War, is spectacularly beautiful, with its aching melancholy and cracked romanticism. I Don't Know What I Can Save You From has a memorably catchy guitar riff and an alluringly resigned sadness. The Passenger has a bit of a dark menace and mystery to it, while Closer, Parallel Lines has some gorgeous piano threading through it. My favourite off of this though is Summer on the West Hill, which is legitimately one of my favourite songs ever. The way it captures the beauty of travel and the random places that no one ever knows is just absolutely wonderful. So yeah, this is a fantastic album packed with meaningful lyrics, lovely bittersweet melodies, and more indie street cred than you can shake a hipster's trilby at.
Even though I'm not her minder, even though she doesn't want me around, I am on my feet to find her, to make sure that she is safe from harm.
Coming in next, we have A Rush of Blood to the Head by Coldplay, a band that helped pioneer that post-OK Computer style of miserable stadium rock that dominated the decade and paved the way forward for bands like Snow Patrol to break into the mainstream. The utter bastards. That aside though, and this sophomore LP from 2002 was undoubtedly the peak of that movement, combining elements of the miserable art rock that defined Radiohead's OK Computer with U2's brand of bombastic stadium anthemics. And yeah, this record is great. The album has a really spacious feel and the songs are populated by nice clean lines and strong melodies, with each track being individually great while also adding to the overall atmosphere. Highlights on a modern classic include In My Place with its lovely organ lines and unforgettable harmonic guitar riff. The Scientist is an amazing detuned piano ballad with a nice romantic lilt. Clocks has one of the most iconic rolling piano riffs of all time. God Put a Smile on Your Face has a striking off-kilter melody and a thumping rhythm, while Warning Sign has a crushingly simple, honest and heartbreaking lyric to savour. But that's just scratching the surface. Politic is a great building opener. Title track A Rush of Blood to the Head is a seething epic. Green Eyes is a gorgeous, romantically salient acoustic love song. I mean, I could go on. Suffice to say that this is excellent and very worthy of a place on this list. Next up, we have The Devil and God Are Raging Inside Me by American art rock act Brand New, which was their third album from 2006. And this LP is a perfect storm of elements. It takes the miserable art rock of OK Computer and fuses it with a bone-crunching heaviness that borders on metal, and then threads in frontman Jesse Lacey's excellent, intellectually savvy lyrics. It kinda sounds like what would happen if the Smiths were an emo-tinged metal band, albeit if you replaced Morrissey's sly wit with a suicidal bleakness. And bleakness is very much order of the day here. This record is strikingly dark, with desperate lyrics like, I drown all these crying babies, if I knew that their mothers wouldn't cry. I hold them down and I'd squeeze real soft, just to let a piece of myself die. Damn! But the darkness is often countered by the excitement conjured from the compositions. The brutal guitar swell of DeGorza, for example, will have you jumping around despite Jesse Lacey's pleading screams of, I'll never get anything right. Other high spots include the low-key art rock ballad Jesus Christ, which is a fantastic meditation on misery and death. You Won't Know turns its nagging guitar line into a raging epic. The likes of Millstone, Not the Sung and Archers have catchy power pop choruses to alleviate some of the existential horror, while Limousine nicely veers between low atmospherics and thunderous squalls for maximum effect. Add into that the awesome baby drowning closer, Handcuffs, and you have a dark-hearted masterpiece for the ages. If you've not heard this one, you really need to rectify that. God, I'm a miserable bastard, because the abject misery continues with our next entry, The Midnight Organ Fight, which was the second LP by the indie icons Frightened Rabbit from 2008. And here we have a fantastic album of jangle pop that's powered by Scott Hutchinson's absolutely phenomenal set of lyrics about love, breaking up and sinking into depression. This is the type of record that can only be made by someone right there in the centre of heartbreak, at their lowest ebb. This is the sound of Scott Hutchinson opening his still bleeding wounds and letting us peer inside. And it's heartbreaking, especially as later the poor silly sausage killed himself, threw himself off a bridge, which he spookily predicts on this album during the song Floating in the Fourth. But that's not to say that the album is only relentless doom. It's actually split into two halves. The first half is far more upbeat with a lot of sweet-natured and twee pop songs. The second half, however, is the expected plunge into emotional despair. And both halves have their own highlights. The first half has I Feel Better, which is a super catchy single that promises to lock away the Greys in a padlock box in a padlock room, which is definitely a good thing as the band's debut album was called Sing the Greys and it was fucking shit. Fast Blood has an Angular Block Party-esque stutter to it, while the likes of Old Fashioned and The Twist have a delightfully twee Kingsian element to them. The second side, meanwhile, has My Backwards Walk, which is an elegant plunge into heartbreak and obsession. Keep Yourself Warm is the band's broken signature tune. The way it takes all of that overwhelming sadness and then slowly builds it up into a thundering rocker is pretty spectacular. Poke, meanwhile, has one of the most intensely emotional lyrics ever put to tape. It's full of love, sadness, anger and regret. I mean, that moment where Scott sings, "And now we're unrelated. I'm rid of all the shit we hated, but I hate it when I feel like this. Because I Never Hated You. Oh man, that just kills me every single time. Mwah! Chef's kiss. That song is a masterpiece. Add into that the stomping catchy pop of the Atheist anthem, Head Rolls Off, and you have a jangly masterpiece that made such an impact that it actually defined the typical indie sound for a good few years. Just incredible stuff. Coming up next, we have 100 Broken Windows by the Scottish rock band Idlewild, which was their second LP from the year of 2000. And although Idlewild have mellowed into a stately folk rock tinged act these days, back at this point in their career they were full of punky snarl and tons of youthful clattering energy. But of course, all of their guitar fury is anchored by the band's soft-hearted, bookish frontman Roddy Womble, who brings a sense of tenderness and an introspective lilt to the proceedings. It's a fantastic combination that pulls the band closer to 80s jangle acts such as R.E.M. and the Smiths than most of their heavyset contemporaries. And this LP right here is very clean, angular and spacious despite its heaviness. It reined in a lot of the wild chaos of the band's debut and has replaced it with a stark coldness. Although these tunes often have catchy melodies, they still carry some of the harshness of the Scottish Highlands with them. Highlights on a flawless record include the anthemic sing-along opener, A Little Discouraged, the brutal power chords of the spangly art rock tune Idea Track, the Gertrude Stein referencing screams of Rosability, the harmonic guitar riffs and resigned sadness of Let Me Sleep Next to the Mirror, the awkward shyness of the utterly lovely Actually It's Darkness, the twisting upbeat pop bounce of Mistake Pageant. I mean, hey, I could go on and on, but you get the idea, there's not a bad track on here. So yeah, this album is absolutely fantastic, and for me personally, it was a very important record that acted as like a gateway into heavier rock and eventually metal, but all the while maintaining that jangly sensibility and emotive quality that I've always loved. It's just perfect. Next up, we have The Last Broadcast by the Mancunian art rock band Doves, which was the band's sophomore LP from 2002. And here we have probably the most successful album plucked from the deluge of art rock records that immediately followed in the footsteps of Radiohead's OK Computer. And just like that LP, the atmospherics are perfectly judged and implemented here, with all the synth interludes and extended ambient breaks working to enhance the mood and tease out an extra degree of melancholy from the record. And the songs themselves are all great, with tons of heart and emotion and these giant cathartic melodies. And yeah, catharsis is exactly the right word here. This album is an exercise in digging deep into sadness in an effort to purify and come out feeling fresher on the other side, and it works like gangbusters. Highlights on an epic masterpiece include, well, everything. Words is awesome with its bright 1980s style melodics and insanely catchy chorus. The magnificent There Goes the Fear is super impressive with its languorous ebbs and flows. NY brings a bit of wiry rock to the table. Satellites is gorgeous with its gospel inflections. Pounding is a great bit of stomping jangle rock. Sulphur Man is a heaving melodic ballad, while Closer, Caught by the River, is an even bigger ballad with its spine-tingling anthemic quality. So yeah, this is a brilliant deep dive into gorgeously layered art rock and unforgettable atmospherics. It's about as good as this type of music gets. Next up we have Black Holes and Revelations, which was the fourth and best album by Overblown rockers Muse from 2006. And yeah, Overblown is exactly right. This album is epic in a way that very few bands dare to try. It's kind of a concept album about the future and space and dystopian rulers and giant battles on the surface of Mars. It's as goofy and as dorky as it comes, but it's just so much damn fun. The zeal with which the band throw themselves into this stuff is infectious, and you just can't help but admire the tenacity and passion. Of course, it helps that the songs are all great. They're colourful, super catchy, and have a great amount of sonic variety. There's just zero dead wood on this record. Highlights in an album entirely comprised of them include Starlight with its bouncing synth riff and fantastic rocking climax. I mean, if you don't get a thrill of when Matt Bellamy sings Our Hopes and Expectations, Black Holes and Revelations, that final time amid all the guitar thunder, I don't know what to tell you. You should go out and have a bit more fun in your life. Supermassive Black Hole is awesome, somehow managing to combine Rage Against the Machine riffage with slick Prince style pop to glorious effect. Map of the Problematique is a thunderous synth infused banger. Invincible is an epic stadium rock ballad that just gets better and better as it builds up. Exopolitics is a fun pogo pop tune with an instantly gratifying chorus, while Closer, Knights of Sidonia, is amazing. That epically bombastic guitar riff is so fun, you just want to jump around and play air guitar whenever you hear it. So yeah, I mean, I'm just scratching the surface here. Every track has its own charms, whether it be the hectic Latino soundscapes of City of Delusion or the atmospheric minimalism of Soldier's Poem, everything just hits its mark and adds up to a modern classic. Amazing stuff from Muse here. Coming in next we have Infinityland by Scottish stadium rockers Biffy Clyro, which was their third LP from 2004. Although at this point in their career the band was pretty far removed from the sanitised and blandly civilised stadium rock version of Biffy Clyro that we have these days. This third album is like a traumatised scream of idiosyncratic weirdness. Apparently bored of writing normally structured songs, the band turned to prog rock for inspiration, making a record that never sits still, its compositions usually spiralling off in unexpected and delightfully surprising ways. And at first this makes the album impenetrable and obtuse, but if you're up for the challenge and give it patience, the record peels back layers like a very interesting onion and rewards you with a fresh and exciting thrill ride. There's nothing else quite like this album, it's genuinely unique. Highlights on a batshit crazy epic include everything, but my cherry picks would be the insanely catchy and insanely heavy There's No Such Thing as a Jaggy Snake, the Incubus inspired My Recovery Injection, which is immediately better than anything Incubus ever recorded. The building wave after wave switches directions several times until concluding with a cathartic rush of deafening melancholia. Some Kind of Wizard is amazing with its constant strumming pattern change-ups. I mean, hey, that's some seriously impressive rhythm guitar right there. While Only One Word Comes to Mind is a beautiful Piscine ballad with fun unexpected detours into metal riffage. So yeah, I mean, I could reel off the entire tracklist, but I'll stop there. Although it would be a crying shame not to mention the beautifully tender sing-along refrain of the Kids from Kibble and the Fist of Light, or the pure insanity of the fun rope-a-doping The Weapons Are Concealed, or the shoegaze walls of noise on The Creepingly Sad Got Wrong, or even the lilting build-up of the Resigned Closer Pause and Turn It Up. So yeah, I guess I didn't stop there after all, but who can blame me when I'm dealing with an album this interesting, inventive, and utterly badass? This album is phenomenal. It's easily Biffy Clyro's best LP in my opinion, and an absolute must-have on this list. So here we are at the top of the mountain, and my pick for the best album of the 2000s is going to go to Turn on the Bright Lights, which was the debut album by the post-punk revivalist Interpol from 2002. And sometimes there are just those rare albums that come out of the blue and absolutely shock and awe you, that shake your understanding of music and leave a lasting mark on your life or the musical culture in general. Turn on the Bright Lights is one of those records. It sent shockwaves rippling through the musical landscape, inspiring a whole generation of young men to rush out, get a guitar and start a band, which in turn led to the rebirth of post-punk, with a plethora of copycat acts arriving in its wake. For me too, the impact of this was intense, as intense as the first time I discovered Morrissey. But whereas Morrissey made me want to stay in my room and mope a lot, Interpol made me want to head out to the local nightclub, pull the hottest girl in there, take her back to mine, fuck her brains out, drink a whole mess of whiskey, pep myself up with a few lines of coke, head back out, find the nearest pack of racists, call them all dickheads and start a fist fight. Such was the latent machismo and sweaty vibes and sexual pulse that radiated from this album. It's still today one of the coolest soundscapes ever put to tape. It's just fucking badass. Highlights on a post-punk masterpiece include the slow burn opener, Untitled, which immediately impresses with its misery and promises of emotional support. Obstacle 1 and PDA show off the band's revolutionary twin guitar style that they, along with the Strokes, pioneered. NYC is a cascading bit of gothic darkness that seems to both love and loathe the vice-riddled streets of New York. Say Hello to the Angels is a whiplash-fast bit of disco jangle, with guitar work that recalls This Charming Man by the Smiths. The New is an obfuscating experimental piece that builds up into an awesome guitar storm, while closer Leif Erikson is phenomenal, as frontman Paul Banks unleashes his talent as a mysterious lyricist with lines like, "She says that my sentimental side should be held with kids' gloves, but she doesn't know that I left my urge in the icebox, threading through the pitch-black atmospherics." So yeah, this LP is brilliant. It's a true classic of its genre, right up there with Disintegration, Unknown Pleasures and Ocean Rain at the very top of the post-punk mountain, and it's my unequivocal pick for the best album of the 2000s. And that's my list, but of course that won't be your list, so please sound off in the comments section and tell me your own best of the decade. Like, share, subscribe and all that other kind of YouTube jazz. Feel free to check out this episode's Spotify playlist, that should be a fun one, link in the description below. Make sure to take care of yourself, but most importantly, just keep on ranking.